Hey everyone, it's John here. Hope everyone's having a fantastic summer. I am as well. One of the things I've been doing over the summer, though, is getting wonderful feedback from a lot of you on what we've been building here at whatifi and some of the things we should be building. And in this video today, I want to get your opinion on this next module that we're building, which is specifically designed for visual effects studios, but also for any company that's bidding projects, how to bid those projects, bid resources and expenses in this sort of modular type fashion. So if anyone watched my writer's strike video here, you would have seen this kind of cool model here where you're able to model out bank balances, costs, expenses, projects that are bidding, and then what happens if those projects are pushed out or delayed. The reality, though, that's a fairly simple basic model here. Like if you have a project like House of the Dragon Season 2, we can model out the revenue for it and when that money comes in. But the reality is that a project is much more complicated. There's a lot more going on, and when that project moves, a lot of things shift with it, not just the revenue. So we've been asked, and we're focusing on being able to build resource planning and capacity plans that also let us be able to understand what happens when an entire project pushes or only part of it's awarded, or if a project is or isn't awarded at all. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you some designs, and I'm very welcome and open to any sort of feedback that folks have on what they'd like to see added to this model. So let's kind of dig into that one. So this is in Canva, this is just a mock-up. But right now when we bid a project in visual effects, there is the revenue component, whether that is a contract with fixed milestones or a bulk amount that is amortized over time, we have that particular component. We have the resources, how many compositors or lighters or animators we're going to need and when over that period of time. And there might be some secondary expenses, whether that's server costs, whether that's meals, there are all sorts of things that can kind of come together. And the reality is that right now we treat each of these as individual things. So you might have your revenue over a period of time, you have your start dates and your end dates for these various people, you have start dates and end dates for these various expenses as well, all as part of your cash flow for that. So what we're proposing is this thing called a container. And a container would allow you to select this, and select this, and select this, shift set them together, and create a container. Think of it like a project or a group. And now all of these events here, like revenue, resources, and expenses, are now bundled up together, and you can name that. So you could call this, project, bid one, whatever it is. This could be, in construction terms, this could be house A, house B, house C. This could be bid one, bid two, bid three, episode A, episode B, all of that sort of thing. So now they're really all nested under this project. Nothing changes, but it's more of an organizational structure. Now the next thing you're able to do here from a cleanliness point of view is you could be able to select that project, a menu pops up, and then if you want to, you can collapse this down, all right? So that it can collapse down into a sub-network here, and everything that's involved in that project is contained there. So nothing changes calculation-wise, but visually this changes. And why is that important? Well, the reality is visual effects studios are bidding multiple projects. And the reality is you need to get all of those into your model at the same time. So you could then, in theory, have multiple projects. Here's project A and project B, all in your scenario with different start dates, end dates, dollar values, and amounts. So looking at sort of a Gantt chart type view here, we still have project A, but now we have project B, which is a smaller project, different timelines, different resources. And then what whatifi does is it marches through this model and aggregates all of that together. So you'd be able to tell what your total revenue is in January or April or July, how many trackers you need at this stage or this stage or this stage, because you're aggregating those together. Now the next thing, this is where whatifi really starts to shine. It's one thing to build the models, but then there's the scenarios afterwards. So if you looked at any of our work before, you realize that we give you the ability to create these alternate timelines. So I put in a decision event here. In one scenario, we're using what's called a modifier. And we're saying, what if project A and everything that's contained in project A is delayed by 3 months? In another timeline, what if project A, the award is only 50%? So we call these two scenarios threads. So in one thread, we pushed project A from starting in January out by 3 months. In another thread, the timings are exactly the same, but what used to be a $300,000 project is now a $150,000 project. What used to require 3 trackers now only requires 1.5. Right? So that's the idea in our software, being able to do that. The other thing in our software is it's really easy to toggle things on and off and test things. So while we are looking at different scenarios here, you could also just go in and temporarily take project B and just bypass that entire project. So the entire project is now temporarily taken out of the calculations. You can toggle that on and off to see those different sort of scenarios. And then lastly, and this is the big one, and I'd love some sort of feedback on that, it's one thing to be able to plug in the resources that are required to do the projects. It's another thing to kind of compare and see what the capacity of a studio is. So in this use case, we're adding a staffing event, an employee event upstream here that has all of our current staff. Then we're looking at project A and project B and the potential staff that's required. We look at these two different scenarios and we have a capacity event. And what that capacity event would do is it would go through day by day by day and do a calculation between the current staff and the needed staff for each of these projects in each of these scenarios. And that will give you a report that would let you know where you are overstaffed or understaffed potentially for all of these projects. And lastly, we can actually add an event here that sort of temporarily puts in placeholder employees, especially if you're understaffed to do a project, and a default rate so you would know how many people you need to hire and also what the cost would be on the cash flow for the entire company. So I threw a lot of things at you there, but in summary, this is a way of modeling out projects and understanding all of the component pieces that make up that project, a way of collapsing those projects down into smaller bite-sized pieces, the ability to have multiple numbers of these different projects, episodes, bids, whatever they are, in sequence here, the ability to start to model different scenarios based on different award parameters for these models here, the ability to bypass, toggle things on and off, and then also the ability to calculate and project in all of these different scenarios where you would have to staff or potentially be overstaffed in all of these models. Love your feedback. If you can throw some comments down below, that would be fantastic, and I look forward to your feedback. I'm going to be at SIGGRAPH in August this year, so if anyone's interested in seeing more of what we're doing here, please feel free to reach out and we can talk more then. Thanks, everyone.